We begin right now with progress in a different investigation, the one into the insurrection. Now, if you follow the developments into the probe of that violent effort to overthrow democracy, you've heard plenty about clashes over those resistant and defiant witnesses and the unusual path to holding them accountable because, remember, most veterans of the U.S. government in both parties engage with lawful subpoenas and probes even when they have major objections. It is a feature of this Trump era that several of these former officials and others are just openly defying the probe, leading to contempt of Congress for Steve Bannon. But here's the thing. Those stories draw attention because they're unusual, not only across history, but they're unusual inside this probe. And that's something I want you to remember as we turn to a big development tonight, because the House committee continues to sit most of these witnesses down, including recently Trump's own family members, and grill them and get evidence and fact check them and compare notes. That process is playing out, and the vast majority of the time it's working. Today, something very important happened. The lawyers who served at the very top of Trump's White House went through that same process as Jared and Ivanka and so many others. Today, two of them facing a grilling by the January 6th committee. Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, a key player who saw the signs of extreme and possibly unconstitutional moves and tried to stop some of them, according to the evidence. You may recall Bill Barr, when Attorney General, shot down Trump's last-ditch voter fraud claims as baseless, as basically lies. Cipollone then had to push back on a plot to try to overrule or outmaneuver Barr by naming some new special prosecutor who might then disagree with what DOJ had found and back lies about voter fraud, and that might somehow fit in to all of the January 6th shenanigans. There's evidence he threatened to resign as well, a pattern that his predecessor used to try to thwart other illegal or possibly illegal plans by Donald Trump. And if that rings a bell, it's because Bob Mueller uncovered that very feature during his investigation. There was the prior White House counsel, Don McGahn, who became something of a star witness in the Mueller probe. So this committee is making progress, reaching witnesses, gathering evidence, and that continues an important accountability process that is going, however, slowly sometimes, alongside the DOJ's criminal investigation and prosecutions. And those started slowly, too, as we've reported. But they may also be intensifying. That's why with a lot of stories, you have to kind of see how they develop. What was true last year may evolve into something a little different in the portrait of the story this year or right now. Because there are these damning accusations against Trump surfacing in some of these criminal trials. And some of these accusations are coming from Trump's own insurrectionist foot soldiers. There's a defendant now accusing Trump of authorizing the attack in a new court statement. That's from Dustin Thompson. His lawyer says any action that he took was because the defendant, quote, believed the lies. The defendant testified that he viewed all of his actions on the 6th as, quote, following presidential orders, adding, I felt obligated to do what Trump demanded. I felt obligated to do that. Now, let's keep it real. That defense has a kind of logic. I mean, everyone does know that Trump told the people to march on the Capitol, and Trump told Pence to help steal the election, and Trump lied about all that voter fraud as a pretense to try to stay in power, and Trump had people around him planning a coup. They've admitted parts of it. So the fans who marched on the Capitol can argue they took that next logical step of storming it like they knew Trump wanted, like a lot of people think Trump wanted, like Trump seemed to demand. So that's the logic part. I'm using that word very carefully because that type of defense may not have much legal stamina. Private citizens don't usually get to just do crime because they think or feel that a politician requested it. Indeed, the so-called following orders defense has a very bad history even for people in government when it is linked to blatant violence or worse. Then there's another court filing that's new that's shedding light on how premeditated this attack was. The FBI has new evidence taken out of the phone of one of those Proud Boys leaders. And it has a discussion of revolution and a plan to occupy government buildings on the 6th. The Proud Boys leader writes, quote, you want to storm the Capitol. That's pretty specific, and that's in advance. And that's where things are really heating up. If you're watching going, okay, Ari, it kind of sounds like you've got a couple things coming together here that you're telling me about. Yeah. It's one thing for a random trespass. Trump's public demands and the debate I just mentioned about the logic and the orders. It sounds bad, but it may not be bulletproof evidence of a secret operational plan to have violence support a coup. Let me tell you something. It's a whole other thing when these militia leaders start turning on each other and secret evidence starts coming out to show what may be, and again, we're going to follow the evidence, but has the outlines of operational planning in advance. You've heard about following the money? Well, here the DOJ is following the blueprint. Who wrote it? Who shared it? And did it ultimately reach Trump aides or Trump himself? And then you have that big time story. New this week, an aide to Trump's longest-serving advisor, Roger Stone, who, of course, has also had legal troubles and been convicted of different crimes. Well, this individual who works with Stone caught on tape making a plea to Trump supporters to descend on the Capitol in a secret call, and that was a full week before January 6th. That is bad. That is pretty damning evidence. That is why Congress also right now is literally debating through this committee whether to refer Donald Trump for potential criminal prosecution, a process where Mr. Trump is legally presumed innocent, but where in a referral the DOJ must, as a legal matter, treat him like any other person to determine if there is sufficient legal evidence to indict him, to seek his trial, and if convicted, and if warranted, to seek his incarceration. This is serious stuff. That is no small question.